We are now streaming.
Okay. If everything went perfectly fine, okay, no. Frost Kieran won't be with us today, but we still do have Kelsey Moser and Drexen. Hey guys, how's it going?
Not bad.
Hey,
Yeah.
it's
So we had
going
a,
good.
yeah,
We're
we had
waiting
a,
for WE to disappoint us all. I am very hyped for that.
I think everybody's hyped for that. I, I can't wait for that, but that's going to be in the discussion later on today. We do have, of course, the LPL overview. So, week, what week are we even on in the LPL? I
This
think
is
it's,
week
The week
7.
7 just ended.
Yeah.
okay. So, how do you guys feel about it? I mean,
Um,
This is okay. So how I feel about week 7 of LPL? It's kind of like the honeymoon phase that was week 6 is completely over. Like week 6, everything was exciting. People were pulling upsets, and all this other stuff was happening. And then suddenly, week 7 comes around, and you realize it's just because they're all bad.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's pretty
So,
accurate. I mean, yeah, I just up to this point, I guess all you can say is I'm disappointed in Team King. But even like OMG is looking really disappointing. I'm still relatively happy with EDG. I don't hold this week's performances that much against them since they're using a sub. Um, Will the Leap being like in last pretty much is kind of hilarious, given their like history,
mhm.
and it's the last week that we should have to see without NaMei, so that's a plus.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
it's gonna be
did.
pretty interesting.
He did say on his Weibo that he will be joining. So he officially confirmed. There was an announcement. I know China doesn't like to do announcements, things like
Yeah.
that. So for once we had one. Um, yeah, so he should be back. I know that this is the thing that there are so many Weibo posts going back about him talking about how he's not feeling well, so he's not streaming. All this other stuff, so it kind of has me concerned. Like, he got sick at Worlds and never fully recovered, but we did see some good performances. He's been scrimming with the team. We'll see if he can be impressive
hmm
again, or if it'll be like an Elements situation where, or a WE situation where it's just like NaMei prison.
Now,
hmm
do you know if like what the ratio is of how they're scrimming with him? Is it like a half and half thing, or
I'm
do you know if
pretty
there's any details on that?
sure it's like half and half. I do know because like the morale was so bad. Like I don't know if it was because the morale was bad, but I know that HYY chose to leave the team um, because of the losses. So I don't know.
hmm
Uh,
I mean, it has to have some sort of like mental uh like breakdown because they keep losing, of course, and like like we've seen videos or at least translations of how Spirit feels about the team. It's like it's not really hidden. Like he's not happy about
yeah,
how his teams are. So
Yeah.
it's definitely breaks down. It's unfortunate for all of these players, except for Aluka because he's just like because he's obviously the problem. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, the thing is like you can people can say like, oh, they're so unhappy and cue the like the tears with the fucking the dollar bills, but like honestly, if you're a competitor like that like really doesn't matter. That comes on the back burner. Like, yeah, you're getting paid great, but if you're like used to being a world champion or competing at like a world class level and you're on these teams that are like relatively shitty, of course you're going to be upset.
mhm,
Now, how you manage that is dependent on the individual, but in terms of like NaMei, when we're talking about NaMei, I the thing is like I don't really expect him to come back and be a superstar since he's been on such a hiatus, at least on
yeah.
the stage. Like he's been scrimming, sure, but I still feel like it's going to be a huge boost for Starhorn Royal Club because it's like, yeah, sure, we're not going to get a prime NaMei coming right back into it like just immediately a top shape, top form, making plays and like just being self sufficient, all this stuff. It's not going to be like that, but at the same time, like just it's anything right now is a massive upgrade. Like even NaMei
Mhm,
at like 20 to 30% potential should be a huge upgrade for Starhorn Royal Club. So
100%.
and
I mean,
the thing that kills me though is that Wei wasn't even that bad the first time we saw him. So Wei, the current AD carry sub that they're using, he wasn't even that bad when he came out. It's just that like literally after time they just started losing and he just started performing really really poorly, and I think he actually had an issue where his only successful champion was really his Callista, so that when they didn't pick that, it wasn't a very good situation, but at the same time, like, you could kind of see over time they started performing worse. They started picking more like random Hekarims. They started YOLOing more. Like, I don't know. I think that there is an overall attitude situation probably at this point, and that's really unfortunate because you have to imagine that if NaMei came in and he was like at his peak performance, that the games that they were winning at the beginning of the split, right? They could have like ridden that kind of momentum going forward, but I feel like it's going to be an uphill battle at this point.
It depends. It depends on how much they weigh NaMei, honestly, because like if you have a new player coming onto your team, like for instance, they had Wei coming onto the team, and I don't know how that does for like a surety, like just like the mental surety, like oh well, we have a new player. How's that gonna work for us? Now they have NaMei. NaMei brings a lot in terms of just like name power alone, let alone just the fact that he has the skill, right? So that now the players, they come into the game and it's like, okay, well, we have NaMei finally. Like now we can perform. So now it's like a boost of confidence in their play. I'm not sure if it's going to actually convert into any of their wins. We're going to have to look into what games they have to play, and if the first few games are going to be up against like top tier teams, or even just like even if the first game's up against Gamtee that's been improving, then that's going to be unfortunate. But I think they need some bad, like if they need to face some bad teams first, which I think, which is saying a lot.
Yeah, see, like that's a thing. I mean, they only really, I think it's 4 weeks. They only have like 4 weeks left to play, so they don't have much time in terms of adaptability to mess around or experiment if they want to get into the playoffs. And I think while attitude and just general unhappiness and morale on the team has been an obvious problem for Starhorn, I do think also with their compositions and the random picks and stuff, a lot of it was compensating for the lack of the ability to siege. So like since they don't have an AD carry that's capable of sieging, they try to do like weird workarounds that didn't really work out. Now the question is, with NaMei back in, are they going to be able to transition back to like their more regular play, or even something like what they used to do when they had Uzi on the team, or like how is that going to work out? Like how are they going to distribute the gold and stuff like that? It's like these questions that I have for the team, even though they only have 4 weeks left and they're just right now they're like barely not able to make playoffs in their current standings. So yeah, I do agree with you, Raz. It's really dependent on their opponents, I think.
They're 2 points, I think, below King. So like we can't really rely on King to win anything at this point. So they could, with a 2-0 set against Gamtee, who's their first opponent, they could slip back into playoff contention in theory. So
there's a lot of time left, and it seems weird, their state right now. I do think they will make the playoffs. I do think it's very possible. I think the players on that team they've all improved. Maybe not Insect, but I think he just needs someone reliable he just needs someone reliable to be there so he can like okay, it's hard to make excuses for him.
I almost feel like feel like reliable isn't the answer though, because it just like Uzi and Insect like just synergize so well just because of how they played, and now it's like will NaMei be able to fold himself back into that playstyle? Because back when he was Devil, he played a little bit more like Uzi because he had to hard carry the team, as opposed to EDG where he just had to be the safe hitter in the back line who was self-sufficient.
He was still considerably more calculated, I think, than Uzi was. You could see. I've been rewatching some of those VODs just kind of because NaMei withdrawal, happens to the best of
I know the feel.
And I'm back at like early positive energy where all he played was Varus. This was even before Shane was on the team, and he would just like flash past towers, but he wouldn't. You could tell that when he would do stuff like that he would live, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like with Uzi, who would always just flash the tower for the kill. So speaking of though, like Uzi right now seems to be one of the more stable members of OMG. I don't know. It's really awkward to watch.
Yeah.
Well,
that's true.
What games did he play in last week?
None of them are that stable. He played. I think he played every set except for the one except for the one in the middle. So he played every set except for
EG was it?
the Gamtee set. I think he played
Was
some
it Gamtee?
OMG.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. I think it was the GT one where they played San and fuck.
No,
And
they did not play that player. They
Wait,
played
seriously?
No, they played Sen and Xiang. Yeah,
Yeah.
played Sen and Xiang, and they picked Vigar, and his Vigar was pretty. I mean,
I mean,
he hit his stuns.
yeah.
It's just it was clear that the team did not know how to play around the Vigar. They just picked it because it was overpowered. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I actually didn't like that because I thought that Xiang is so much better on skill shot champions, but
Can we talk
that's
about
what it is.
the OMG situation when it comes to supports? Because they do have a lot of supports now.
oh yeah.
And if it feels like they're not really willing to commit to, I'm not even sure if they're willing to commit to any.
80 carries other.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like they're in the situation where with the supports where they're eventually just gonna fire all of them except Dada 7. His triumphant return. He will rise.
Oh
they
my
will they will
gosh.
just like they'll clear the stage and they'll reveal that there's like this revolving mechanism that comes up from the floor.
This needs
And
to
there will be
happen.
Dada 7.
The LPL playoffs, kind of like in season two Worlds, where it's like the stage comes up for the players, and it's like you get to see the roster finally, and that's what happens with OMG. You see, okay, who's the support? Finally, we get to see someone who they're gonna commit to, and it's just like you see Dada Seven's face, just kind of like he's just like smiling while he's with the team. And you're like, God, why do they do this?
Yeah.
Maybe he's improved in his time off. Like you just see some battle scars on his face. He's a new man, just like
Battle scars
and
from his Dungeon Fighter Online.
The thing about Dada 7 is that he always comes back, right? And it's usually like
Mhm.
summer playoffs, right? But
yeah. But I think how do you
I'm
guys
not naming any
see?
names. But
Yeah.
and
How do you guys see Xiang? Like I
he-
feel like
he's not
Xiang's my. Not,
I feel like Xiang. I feel like
my favorite.
there we
I
go.
feel like Xiang had the good Morgana game, but I don't know. Like, what I want to know is like, who are they gonna run in playoffs? Because I don't think they'll run Xiang in playoffs, but I'm not sure if they'll run Uzi in playoffs. So it's like, I don't know.
I think they really want UZI and Cloud. I think
Yeah.
that's what they really want, but it's not currently working optimally. I think that each of the supports that they have, actually, this is something that people might not know about Cloud, is that he does have champion pool issues. Like, remember, if Alistar is ever back in meta, just never let that guy play, right? And he actually only really had the success on, like, the really flashy, like, the NaMei and the Thresh, and then he came out at Worlds with Janna, and he finally had, like, a third champion, right?
Yeah.
And then I think Law obviously has a similar situation. We got to see some of his Janna today, and it was frankly, it wasn't even bad. It was just not good. It was just so,
It was Lua. Like
It was it's Law, and I feel like the issue with Law is honestly the issue with Law right now is just that his vision control is the worst of the three.
Mhm.
Like, I think you can tell on the map it's significantly darker.
yeah.
Yep, I agree. I think his vision control is worse, but I also feel like that's a bad comparison. I was gonna say I feel like he's like the opposite of Dada, because Dada's like absolute trash mechanically, but actually placed the most wards, I think, and then Lo's like the opposite of that. Like, I don't think he's like super mechanically gifted, but I think he's like okay in that regard, but he just doesn't play support, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And that's my main issue with him. Whereas Cloud, he doesn't have a good champion pool because he's only played Thresh and Janna, but he's at least good on those champions. And I think that come playoffs, that if Cool and Going find a threat that they're really, really scary on, that they can actually bring in Cloud and play those two champions, just because there'll be threats elsewhere to ban and other meta picks to ban, that they won't really prioritize banning Cloud out. So I still feel like Cloud would still be the best choice. I'm still on the fence about Uzi though, just because it's just, honestly, it just shows how awkward of a team it is for Uzi. Like that's just not an Uzi team, and it's like if you put Uzi in any team, OMG would probably be the worst stylistically. So it's just really weird. I don't know. And even like I don't know. Even when the games that Son was playing, I feel like he was doing just fine. Like like
Yeah.
I don't even think he's like below average. I think he's just good. He just doesn't have the pedigree of some other AD carries.
I
And
mean, there was that one game where San face checked the bush level 1 and had to back immediately. That was painful, but he did catch up. That was nice.
yeah, but I wouldn't
So
really. I mean, that's
mhm,
that's like bad decision making, not so much bad play, I guess.
yeah.
Which is
So
kind
how
of
would you guys how would you rate the OMG support so far? Just like this guy's better than that guy. Like
I
for instance,
feel
like mhm,
I feel
go on.
like stylistically, Cloud is cool support.
Mhm.
Um, Xiang is Loveling's support, and La is um, UZI support, and that's how they want to play. Like Xiang wants to do the roams with Loveling. They want to do like the two-man gank style.
Mhm.
He likes to get like the picks, and Loveling's always all about the picks, and like that's how Loveling used to play. And you have to kind of wonder like if that was like sort of a mentorship type deal. Um, and then you have like Cloud, who I think wants to make the big plays, and he wants to get like the Janna ults that split up the fight. Not necessarily the ones that save UCI, but the ones that split up the fight. And then Cool can get like the picks off of that, right? And can get the kills off that with like the assassin type play, and he's more likely to roam mid.
Yeah.
He wants to make like the big team fight plays rather than like protect UZI. I think he just kind of feels
Oh,
like
that was so bad.
his 80 carry is just kind of there.
Mhm.
Like,
And I think that's better for the team because
Um,
when OMG tried to run protect like Juggermaw against Vici, it was pretty terrible, honestly.
yeah, but I don't even like the way I feel about Juggermaw and OMG is that you can, in theory, run three threats, right? You're a team that can run three threats really competently, um, and you choose to limit yourself to one. That's my
Mhm.
issue with the Juggermaw.
Yeah.
And then of course they could have they had it with Zed instead of Cool, and then on Lulu, and they had going on Law go
On Lua.
going on Lulu
Yeah.
in the one against Vici Gaming, but then Cool just got like camped and he didn't ward, and Cool's always had that problem, right, where he
Yep.
just like doesn't he doesn't play like he cares about the jungler. Like I feel like this is the issue with OMG mentally, is that they always feel like they can outplay. It doesn't matter what the situation is. Like it doesn't matter if we're behind. It doesn't matter if we're all this. It doesn't matter if there are three people in my lane. Like you've seen the situations, right, where going actually has his lane warded, and he sees the jungler come up, and he starts to go back, but then he's like, nah, and he comes in and he tries to like all in the enemy top laner.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the OMG salt's
Oh.
coming down, right? Because now that you have, it comes down to what does the LPL LPL season give? Because we see, like for instance, we saw the 1-1s today, and they didn't make. I mean, not today, but like we saw them, and it doesn't make much sense. In any other region, you start to see teams divide on which one's the best, which one's like middle class, and which one's like the surefire bottom tier team. And we're not really exactly seeing that anymore. Not here, anyways. The surefire bottom tier team, everyone just kind of like was like, all right, Gamtee, they're done. That's we've placed those teams in the rank that we see them as. But then we start seeing the 1-1s come down. Like, who did EDG 1-1 against who this week? And it was
It was
actually Snake. Yeah, okay.
they've won
Yep.
one. They've only won one
Oh, it's
against
OMG.
OMG, Snake,
Oh, yeah.
and King.
Hmm.
Or EDG's won ones. Cool. OMG is the only team to have not gotten 2-0'd. Which I guess speaks to their playstyles. Like sometimes they can get the outplay, but like 50-50, it doesn't work out for them.
Yeah.
Um, they
And so-
have the second most 1-1s, I think. They're tied for the second most 1-1s. The first most is like Gamtee and M3, I think.
Hmm. And so, how do you guys feel? Like we already talked about how we felt like OMG doesn't exactly play optimally throughout especially Cool throughout the laning phase, as good as they are. So, how do you, especially during the Demacia Cup, which we we should probably get to anyways, just because it weaves into OMG's problems as a whole. Because during the LPL, OMG won one against Gamtee, a team that's actually been rising. Um, but how do you guys see their
They've
Xiao Gu
done
game?
that twice now, right?
Yeah.
Both
How do you,
times.
so how would you take their Xiao Gu games that they just played last night? Yeah.
Um, it was like the first. You could tell the first couple of games they were just trying to style on people. Like they didn't really honestly care, and then they left Figar open the second game, and they frankly got pretty destroyed by that. And then they came back the third game and they crushed people. Fourth game was like the thing is that most of their losses were a lot closer, just because they could find like these outplays, but overall, their early game vision is bad. The way that they overcommit in the lanes is bad, so they're gonna get really punished by that. Especially with a good jungler like Swift
Hmm.
Yep.
on Xiaogu, and it's just that's really the big issue is that they over like every single lane overextends.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I'd say this is an issue they're having to try to overcompensate for their like really confused and not really set in stone bot lane. But unfortunately, it's been a problem with OMG for a lot longer than that. And now I think that now that the jungle talent is increasing, they just can't get away with it like they used to as much. I mean, granted, they're still second place in the standings for LPL, so I guess in a sense they can. But in terms of like if you're looking at like future competition, like you can really tell that that stuff's like a lot more exposed now. It's a lot more obvious to find those weaknesses.
And so OMG didn't play too well in the Demacia Cup, that's no secret. But how do you frame, because I think the Demacia Cup and what it provides to China currently is a kind of like a rating system and competition between the LPL teams and the LSPL teams. So how would you rate the LSPL teams that came through the Demacia Cup? Didn't do all too well, but Xiaogu kind of, they took it out. So how do you frame those teams in the competition between the lower tier, or I mean the upper tier LSPL teams?
I don't really like them. I mean,
Yeah.
this like I feel like obviously I had this king fixation, and then Snake's doing really well, so you can't kind of see this situation where maybe the top LSPL teams can make waves, can do really well, but I don't feel it this time around. Even though we have like the bigger names, like we have Swift, we have Heart, Switch. Um,
It sounds like a Korean name. I'm just gonna put that
yeah.
up. Yeah.
And we have Swift, we have Heart, even, I mean, you can even go back and count Illusion. I don't know. I don't really count Illusion.
Wow. Rude.
I think he's declined.
Ouch.
But you start to see these, and then, of course, I think ADG is doing probably the best.
Yeah.
I have a feeling Raz disagrees with me based on that.
Yeah, okay. I have a bit of a rant, and it comes down to the LSPL teams this season compared to last year. And it's just based on LSPL teams last year. I wouldn't say they were bad, but they were pretty bad as a pool. Because you saw the amount of teams, and really the only ones sticking out were King and Snake. The other teams, they had their shining moments, but they didn't have all too good of a macro play. And even Snake, their terms of macro play was based on split pushing and stalling out a game. And so it wasn't even that good. It wasn't all too good on that front either. Now we have a new LSPL season, new year, and we have a new system, like a whole, and it's based on OGN's old system, in which they go into group stages, they get them out of group stages, and they go into a playoff realm. And so we all expected, now that the LSPL teams got, like, we all expected now that we see new and improved LSPL teams taking in Korean players, raking in old LPL talents, and we just thought that competition in the LSPL would be superb. We would see really, really solid teams coming out of it. And in all fairness, we've seen great LSPL teams come out, but their macro play is significant. I wouldn't say significantly worse, but it's worse than what we saw of King back in their day in the LSPL. And it didn't make any sense. It felt like competition as a whole has lowered, and it comes back to the new LSPL system, in my belief, because now we have four separate groups, and we've kind of taken top tier teams and separated them. Like for instance, now OMD is in the same group as World Elite Future, but that's it for that group. Like that's the most competitive group you'll see out of that one, in my opinion, anyways. And so now we see them facing each other in, I think it's best of threes or I don't even remember anymore. My mind is in
Best
the
of twos right now.
best
Are
of twos.
you
Yeah, best of twos. Yeah, yeah.
Are you talking about playoffs?
No, groups.
Okay.
But for playoffs, there'll be best of fives, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And so in groups, they play each other twice, best of twos, and then the rest they just play shitter teams. That's what it comes back to. Like they'll play shitter teams for the most part, and they'll finally get that good. You'll see a good game in a group like once or twice. And so I think the system as a whole is poor. I don't know how it'll turn out for playoffs, because then that's when competition will obviously like increase, when all of the good teams will be facing off each other best of fives. But that's going to be later off in the future. But for now, we don't see that good. We don't see performing LSPL teams, because I don't think they've been put in that position to perform. And it comes back to even the best team right now in the LSPL, in my opinion, which is ADG. They're basically the new Snake in how they play out a game. Baimi just has his, like, it's even worse actually, because Baimi plays Katarina a lot, which you'll see in the LSPL. You'll see a Katarina pick coming out, and then you'll see Ray sticking to his Riven, and all they want to do is just snowball off of the early game, and they have that freedom. They can snowball off in the early game and then just completely ram the enemy team to a quick defeat. And so you're like, well, where's the macro play? What happened? Well, okay, I guess that they don't need it, because they're not facing good teams. Like the only good team in their group is Legend Dragons, and they're not that good. They're pretty, like, I like them, but they're not.
I like that.
Like,
I like
but
the
that doesn't
only
mean
one
anything.
though.
Yeah, but I think they have potential, but they're not going to be
I
able
liked
to be
Energy
ADG.
Pacemaker. Okay. Disclosure.
That's not. So me liking them doesn't say much about that team. But I think they'll do all right. They'll certainly get out of groups, but when they get into playoff situations where they're gonna have to face like OMD, Xiaogu, it's not gonna be pretty. And so competition isn't the best in LSPL, sadly enough, regardless of how many good teams there are. And maybe that'll change in playoffs, but we saw in Demacia Cup a good lot of them failed, and that is how it is.
I have a couple things. First, I think that, I mean, last year doesn't, and then we had a brief conversation about this, I think.
Mhm.
But last split, there were only, like you said, 2 good LSPL teams, and they faced each other once, right, in the league before it was done. So you can say that, okay, in theory, there are more competitive LSPL teams now, and they could face each other and they could develop the macro strategy. I still feel like there was more developed macro strategy out of the top teams in LSPL last split than the ones this split.
Yeah.
So, like, this is the issue we talk about. It's like, OMG, if they just face these teams, they can beat them. They'll realize they have to have macro strategy. It's like, no, they just go back and they're like, the problem was we didn't outplay them hard enough. We didn't get enough quadra kills, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think like text the system's really good, like it works for OGN, but when you have kind of a shallow talent pool in LSPL, it doesn't really work out, because then there's always like these really top heavy situations, which I think will lead to really boring playoffs. And I mean,
I think
yeah, I don't think OMG getting knocked out in Demacia Cup is like a testament to like LSPL teams, because that's like the major outlying factor. Like almost every other team got like 3-0'd.
And if they're, except for Energy Pacemaker, or not Energy Pacemaker, Gamtee, right? Yeah, Gamtee got knocked out.
Yeah.
So the issue is that we come back to is more, you can almost see anyone winning just because the level of macro play is non-existent. So if you go all in on the snowball strategy, and this is like the problem we had with them at the beginning of last year, right? LPL teams in general. If you go all in, then it's like a 50-50 trade, as long as your players are as long as you have a couple relatively competent players. they can just snowball these leads. And I think a problem is the metagame, because strategic diversity is what people say, but the only actual gold is in the towers, because you can't get like early gold injections through dragons, so you can't set up a strategy like that. So really all you want are like the kills and the dragons, so that's what they and the towers, excuse me, so that's what they tunnel in on, because the early dragon isn't going to do a whole lot for you anyway. So a lot of teams will kind of like choose to give up these dragons for like things that are already in the lane early on. And then you get these situations where they kind of screwed up their early game plays and they're falling behind, and the enemy team is focusing on dragons and they get like the 5 dragons and they just kill you late game. So I feel like that trade-off isn't super rewarding. It's either way, it ends up being like a 50-50 situation.
And so there are teams that do focus down dragons in that greater objective, like for that end game goal. And one of them is EDG. And they ended up replacing just like, not replacing completely, but they tried out Fireloli, who has been getting a lot of hype in the Chinese community.
Wasn't Clearlove not feeling well?
Yeah, I think, well, he was either not feeling well or they just wanted to play Fireloli. I think it was probably a little bit of both, because he was like at the venue. You could see on the Chinese stream he was watching the games, like sitting next to Aaron, and they were like on this balcony looking over. And so he was feeling well enough to at least show up at the venue, which, I mean, Baga fractured his elbow. What's your excuse?
Fractured his elbow. Came in with
like a brace.
Yeah, one hand only. Is like, I'm just gonna kill cool this game. 1v1.
No problem. I got this. So I think part of it is just that Snake was the team that 2-0'd them in the past. So maybe they wanted to style like a little bit. Maybe they didn't want to show off some strategies that they have planned to deal with Snake, like potentially in the playoffs. Regardless, they played like full YOLO. Fireloli died, or Black Lolly, I guess is his name now. Black Lolly died to red buff. So a little background on Black Lolly or Fireloli is he's always had kind of this attention for playing solo queue in the community, and he's one of those people that people fixate on and say if he could just be in a competitive team, he would just dominate everyone, dominate the whole scene. He can literally play anything at a competitive level. Like, his best roles that he plays most often are going to be top, jungle, and AD carry. So that's the background on Black Lolly. We've seen him play as a sub for EDG top lane last split, and it was equally underwhelming. He lost lane pretty hard to NaMei, and granted those games were like equally trollish, but I mean more so, right? Because they had Jace AD carry and Sejuani jungle, and oh no, I just used Diamond Prox's name in vain. But yeah, it was neither time he hasn't really impressed. And when you're talking about he has less early jungle pressure than Clearlove, and his team fighting is nowhere near as good, like, where's the trade-off, right? So
yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it was, like you said, to style, and because Clearlove wasn't feeling well, I by no means think they're planning on permanently keeping him, at least I hope not. But yeah, it's actually kind of cool watching...
the main shot caller too, right?
Yeah,
right now,
yeah.
so.
It's actually kind of cool watching this game, because there's been so much debate over Clearlove, who's, like, honestly one of the most mysterious players in League, just for the fact that he's been on top teams for so many years, but everybody consistently considers him underwhelming. But, like, a lot of the things he brings to a team are actually, like, invisible to, like, the average viewer's eye, which is kind of interesting, just because, like, you could tell when they were team fighting with Fireloli or Black Lolly now, compared to how they team fought with Clearlove. Like, Clearlove was a lot better at setting up zone control, and people would follow him up and stuff like that. With like, EDG would just go in, like one at a time, like a boxcart train or something like that, and like in these games. So now it's like, it's really weird, because now you actually see, like, wow, okay, maybe he really does, like, impact the game this much through his team fights, even if his early pressure is bad, because, like, the team fights are, like, legitimately night and day difference with Fireloli playing. So I mean,
that just comes down to it. Like, I feel like League of Legends is a very hard game to quantify, like to identify strengths. And so like people overvalue mechanics or people overvalue like early game gank pressure. And early game gank pressure is amazing, like I'm not gonna lie, like but it depends on if the team needs it. And on Clear Love, I don't think in any iteration of World Elite or EDG, I don't think any of the lanes have necessarily needed that pressure. And I'm not. I do want to see Clear Love on a team in which he is forced to choose like forced to actually like maybe be in Spirit's position. Like let's put Clear Love and put him on World Elite and see okay how does and
Honestly,
see
though,
how does he perform.
I think Clear Love's early pressure has been better in recent weeks too. Like he's been early ganking more and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that would be a mess. And like even in these games, like yeah, Fireloli like brought even less impact, but I think that it wasn't quite as necessary, especially in game one, like with Koro facing off against like fucking Flandre Nar, which is like the worst Nar in the history of professional esports,
It's funny
which
because
is
he's
literally does nothing.
like my
And
issue with. You can keep talking.
and I was just gonna say, and also obviously Def with an insane Corki, which is something else we need to talk about. Def, the difference between Def and Crystal in the series later on, but I'll let you continue.
My thing with Flandre is you saw him play in LSPL and even in some of these third-party tournaments where if you gave him like his weird off-meta picks or his carry top laners, he would just like go off and he would like be split pushing. You couldn't really catch him. Like he would have this game impact here, and he really stood out. And now you can see him play like Rumble, and his Rumble's pretty good, and it's like team fight oriented, and the team overall is doing better. But you kind of have to feel like Flandre is like caged a little bit, right? So you think that okay, Snake is doing a certain level and performing to a certain level now, but you have to wonder about Flandre as like that particular player. If he wasn't forced onto champions like Gnar, like
Flandre is like the U of the season.
where you have to kind of wonder like if he were on like WE, like we just did that, right? And they need like a carry.
Hmm. That's the thing.
Clearly, if we just move, if clearly the irony of this all is if we just start moving EDG players to World Elite, we might have a solution
EDG
here.
and Snake.
Yeah. That's what it comes down to. I'm really actually this makes me value Flandre a lot more. Before in the LSPL, I saw him play, and it's like, okay, that's can you play anything else? Can you play anything else? Like in the sense of like a more structured top laner, and he's shown that. I think with Flandre, it shows what he's willing to give away, like give away to make the team a lot more structured. Because now he's playing his Maokai, and he's playing Gnar, and like yeah, he's playing Gnar.
He's kind.
Kind of.
Call it playing. No, I mean from Aluka's Gnar to Koro's Gnar. Like, where are we here?
Yeah. And it just shows that he's willing to give up his champion pool, or at least like something what he's comfortable on, to really force. It comes back to God. What is his name? Crystal onto it. Like I'm back to like thinking Fantu fan. I was just about to say Fantu fan. Jeez. But yeah, put Crystal on a position in which he can carry. Because I guess they've realized that if you have Crystal on his champion and you have Flandre and his carry champion, well, it's like the enemy team's like, I'm gonna pick one lane and I'm gonna destroy it. Like, and then he's not gonna be that team's not gonna be in a good position. So. Like, I respect Flandre a little more this season, even though if he has played a little, not that good, or at least in this couple weeks.
I think they're just using the regular season to try to get him into that kind of team fighting role and get him comfortable with that, but I do miss carry Flandre, so. Also, man, I don't know what EDG was doing with, like, picks and bans, either, because... Oh my god. In the second game, if we're going to talk about Crystal, like, Crystal literally just got, like, the god comp. Like, just, ugh. Oh, like Janna, Lulu, Nunu.
We talk about how bad that is for OMG. It's like the perfect situation.
Yeah,
for Snake,
seriously.
right?
This is like how Snake prospers. And they gave him like if you like it's almost like you just said have the floor. Pick whatever would give you the biggest chance of winning whatsoever. And it's like holy shit, they just got like it was like Juggermaw, but there was like no self sufficiency. It was just all Juggermaw. There wasn't like a
Yeah.
Zed pick or anything like
Yeah,
that. It was
or
just like
Kassadin, or
100% on it. It's like how did they get away with that? And it's like
and OMG
for
tried
me,
that and it sucked. Anyway,
for me, it's just kind of weird how like I mean how easy it is to identify Snake's win conditions and like and how that usually revolves around Crystal being just like the super focal point, and then teams are still allowing it to happen. That to
Mhm.
me is just completely bizarre, and that kind of shows the difference between Crystal and Deft in the series. Because if you look at Deft in Game One, I don't know, there's some images going around about the damage done in that game,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
holy cow, like Deft did so much damage on Corki, and then like that was like with a pretty self-sufficient comp. Like he didn't really have everyone just like catering to his needs, and Crystal obviously didn't either. And you saw the difference in Game One versus Game Two. That's why like it's so hard to talk to people that think like we're like shitting on Crystal all the time because it's a hard topic to discuss because yeah, Crystal is really good. I mean, I'm not going to deny that,
I
but
don't
he's
think he's
spoon-fed more. I think
bad,
he's
but
spoon.
the level to which he's elevated.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he's spoon-fed more than literally any other carry in any league right now. And like the problem is like okay, this is the win conditions for Snakes. Like they don't really give Crystal a lot of opportunities to try to play self-sufficient because they're always going with what works. So I guess it's hard to say like can Crystal develop into something that's a little more self-sufficient. But just
Mhm.
as is, it's like we're not. I don't want people to think we're saying he's like trash or something. But like you have to look at the context of the situation and how when Crystal's doing all these having all these crazy games and just winning by himself, it's not a fucking 1v5. Like I'm so sick of people saying Crystal is 1v5 because it's not fucking 1v5 when you have 4 buffs on Crystal and he's shooting and mowing everyone down while people are zoning for him. Like that's how
Mhm.
Snake wins and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing to be ashamed about with that. It works for Crystal, but like okay, we have to be realistic here and how Crystal's getting his wins versus like other 80 carries. I don't like stop calling Crystal the best 80 carry in China, please. Just stop. Please
Yeah,
stop.
he is. That's the biggest problem I've always had with him. He is the least self-sufficient AD carry, but you know what? That works in the sense that they're willing to build a team around him. If they're willing to build a team around him, that's completely fine. In which they can just say, okay, you can play your Kog'Maw, you can play your Draven, you can play like Callista, and that'll be completely fine. We'll just pretty much we'll coddle you. We'll make it all right. We'll get through this game, and you'll be perfectly fine. And that it puts Snake in a bad position sometimes when teams decide, well, we're just gonna ban them out. Like we're either gonna ban out what makes them comfortable and what gets them to that position in the game, or we'll have a play style that just shuts down like Crystal. And we've seen that with UZI in Star Wars Royal Club, and it's not exactly reliable to have. It's not a reliable play style to go for. And so when teams decide, like, let's come playoff, like Snake, in my opinion, will get to the playoffs, but will they thrive? Will they do well? Will team? I don't think so. Once picks and bans come through, we'll see the same situation, which World
Let's
Elite.
hope not.
Yeah, well, let's see. But I just think it just comes down to that. World Elite, like took games off of them because they were like, all right, we're just gonna ban you out and destroy you. Like that's like, yeah, It
That's
seems so. It's like a clear path. It's crazy to think a team won't take that path.
exactly, yeah. And the thing is like it is absolutely insane what Snake's gotten away with when you consider the fact that the last place team, which is World Elite, took a game off them, like just by banning properly. Like that just goes to show like the vulnerabilities of Snake that just aren't being like fully exposed right now. And don't get me wrong, Snake's evolved into a really good team, but I feel
Mhm.
like any team that studies well enough and can do drafting properly will like just trash them in any form of international competition. So I don't know. That's my main concern. Like they're so one dimensional, but that one dimension works really well. It's just that you can't always rely on that in teams that are smart. And why EDG let them get away with that comp in game two is like I have absolutely no idea. It
I
was
think.
just insane.
I mean, I think that like we talk about why don't the top position teams ban these compositions and why do like the lower tier ones? I mean, that's your answer, right? Because the lower tier ones are looking for wins. They're trying to get into the position of the playoffs, whereas the top tier teams are like, okay, have whatever you want, continue to feel comfortable. We'll mess with you later. We'll
Mhm.
get to you later. And I think that the situation reminds me a lot of OMG from Spring Split last year when they had Shi Young, and he was used to not having jungle pressure, right? Like people wouldn't gank him because it was like the 4VO meta, and everyone was very comfortable just like continuing to put on that illusion. They let him play like his best champions, or they let him play self-sufficient champions, and then come playoffs like IG, which was like uniquely in this position that obviously IG can take them down. Like, we have Zatai who can play whatever, so we can just ban, like, 10 mid laners if we have 10 mid laners to ban. And then we can camp him, and then, like, you saw that OMG disintegrate. You saw them disintegrate in IET when Edward Gaming did that. You saw them kind of disintegrate against SK Telecom. When SK Telecom banned Syndra and LeBlanc. So, just, it's a very similar situation where you have, like, again, you can talk about Crystal and Shiyang mid in the same way, where they have this thing that really works for them, and it works for them, like, ridiculously well, right? But it's this thing. And we have seen Crystal when they tried to make him play more self-sufficient, and he would just, like, get killed until this, like, part where he had enough damage where he could just two-shot people. Because they were so good at using minion waves in the LSPL context, of course, to stall out the games. So that they could literally make the games go indefinitely, just to get Crystal to this point where he could, like, auto-attack people to death on Kog'Maw. Without, like, even if an assassin came at his face, he still had, like, the 2 auto-attacks that he could get off to kill them.
I think the funniest part of the most hilarious part of the EDG versus Snake game was when when Crystal was just farming alone, and you just see you just see the Kassadin, like EDG's Kassadin. I was like, all right, okay. I'm gonna try and assassinate him. I'm just gonna. He like blows everything, and it's like, oh my.
Idea.
And this didn't work. Crystal was like, all right, 1, 2. Okay, all right. He's almost dead.
Raz's Kog'Maw impersonation.
It's hard to see Kog'Maw. Jesus. But speaking of poor pick and ban scenarios, King. So apparently, Kelsey, King's coach. What team is he on now?
Gamtee.
Oh my god, that's the quickest way to like just hop on the Gamtee hype train. Because King's coach, what was his name again?
Love TT. So StarCraft people might know Love TT if they followed like Chinese StarCraft at all. He was involved in like some questionable money exchanges.
That's the best wording I've ever heard.
Okay,
if I ever rob a bank, that's what I'm going with.
So you guys can look it up. It's on Wikipedia, whatever. It's not exactly a secret. And they probably do it better justice than my account of it, based on their account of it. But he was part of King. King had like pretty good picks and bans, really good understanding in the meta. LSPL, they get into LPL, they replace their Chinese coach with a Korean coach. And then Gamtee picks him up. And I hadn't realized Gamtee picked him up until like last night, but it makes a lot of sense given some of the performances Gamtee has been able to, like with the roster and kind of the patchwork that they have and the way that their style of play has transformed slowly over time. You can kind of see some of the traces and some of the changes, but they're not the same players that King had, right? Also, so they're only able to like get these 1-1s at this point. But it's really interesting to see that like this is the bottom of the barrel team that's able to take wins off of like the top teams based on, and then they have like really in situations really intelligent pick ban. So
yeah, I was pretty broken up about that. Not even broken up, but I was just I was wondering for the longest time going into the LPL why King was not performing. Like for sure, you can talk about the meta changing, you can talk about the picks and bans that were just odd, like completely odd. You can talk about poor champion pulls by one player or another, but it came back to the fact that King as a team has changed how they play out fights. They used to be able to take fights, like for instance, like the easy King comparison, or at least like going back to how they used to play, was that the bottom lane would never lose, but if they ever take a bad situation, if there was ever a situation in which they're about to like lose out in a fight, you would see Skye would come down immediately with a teleport. You just see like perfect teleport timings. You'd see Assassin and like Assassin would be roaming down immediately, and that's like exactly something like that. That's the easy comparison you can make about Assassin as a player. Assassin now is picking poorly, and now not only is he picking poorly, but he is roamed so much less compared to how he used to play. Like he just sticks to the lane now, and I'm not sure if that's something that you can like attribute to
King
coaching
doesn't
success.
do anything. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's
No,
a
they don't.
coaching situation, a player
Yeah.
mentality situation. I don't think
Mhm.
like we can't just point to this. Like the only thing I'll do for the coaches is say that you
Yeah.
can see the difference in like the pick and ban, and I
Yeah.
think that's significant. And you can see them like slightly trying these things that are almost King-esque. In a lot of ways that maybe like the coach thought of this is the way you should play right now,
Yeah.
but no matter like what we try to decipher, like what King's problem is, like the Vayne Fiddlesticks lane with the Jarvan top doesn't help, but they're just not doing anything. They just
Mhm.
sit in lane and they let teams lose. And we saw like in the King versus Snake series, so we were talking about Snake. Last time they faced them, they went 1-1 because King was more comfortable against Snake, I feel. And they had like a more proactive game plan. They were able to take that game off Snake. And then this series, they just sat there and they just
Yeah.
lost towers. They just gave up dragons, and they did this against M3 this week too. And they kind of slowly like curled in on themselves, and then Snake was doing these stupid things like these overextensions in the base, and they would get aced repeatedly, and because they couldn't close off that, and then so King was just like, oh, okay, we'll just kill you here. Like you could have made this happen earlier in the game.
Yeah, there's no map movement, there's no team play until they're forced to choose and forced to do something. They have to be forced into a situation now in which they actually have to like fight back rather than before in which they were engaging in these fights. They were actually more forceful in how they played the game. And so now we're seeing a lot more criticism about the players on the teams. And one that I have always been on the fence about, or been a little bit iffy, is MLXG. MLXG has been a player that he hasn't seen much. Like, in fact, he's been praised in China of how he plays. And people are like, well, like, for instance, there's one about Kakao praising MLXG as one of the
Yep.
best, like, jungles he's faced in. And so it comes back to like what has changed about him. Has anything changed about him? But in my mind, it just comes back to the role of a jungler on a team. Like it's so like the jungling position is actually easily the hardest position to actually talk about because the jungling position in my mind is just simply an extension of team strategy and how they go into a game, their mentality, their thought, how do they want to play out a game. They go in and it's like, all right, jungler, this is your focus on this game, or at least they have to come in with a focus initially. But MLXJ is basically a chicken, like a headless chicken at this point, and how he plays out a game, and it just comes back to team strategy and how they want to choose, like how they choose to play out a game. Like it's not there. There's no choice. They just play horribly in my mind. And so, can you criticize MLXG certainly for his mechanics? Like he's been playing extreme, like if that's what you want to talk about, but you can't. You can't really criticize how his early jungle pressure because at that point that's just a team problem. That's a communication issue. That's just and maybe it is his fault because that maybe he's put in that position in which he's supposed to carve out these paths, but it's just not happening. So now Gamtee, yeah, the stage is yours now. How do you...
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just feel like King, like, I wish they would rebrand because everything that made them King is no longer anything about King. Like, they just play polar opposite. I don't know if, like, I don't know if it's like a coaching situation. I don't know if they're, like, malnourished in a garage or something. They just can't think. I don't know if
They
someone traveled back
eventually
in
got
time, like one of
fined
these.
so much for not showering.
But I don't know if like someone went back and like went to a cryogenic chamber and like stole the mojo out of the like chambers or like what happened. But like seriously, the team is completely different and it sucks because, I mean, I mean we praised King very early from the beginning, but if people just watch VODs from week 6 through 8 or 5 through 7, sorry, and then they watch VODs from the off-season tournaments before week 1, it's literally different teams. Like like if you just remove the team label
Mhm.
and you just watch those VODs, you would never assume they're the same team. It's not even close, and that's
Yeah.
like they're like the most changed team in LPL, and it's for the worst. It's really
Which is
dis-
so bizarre because you talk about these teams that like literally had their playmaker, like their primary playmakers removed for these big name Koreans, right? But they
Yeah.
still like their identities still feel even similar,
Yeah.
more similar than the way King is playing, and they have exactly the same roster.
Mhm. And so, like, I feel the best thing that we saw was of this LPL week was the first game actually between M3 and King, in which M3 is actually becoming a lot better of a team. They
I'm
did switch. Hmm?
no go ahead.
Okay, yeah, they did swap out their jungler Dream S. I don't know how you're supposed to put that
Why are
one
they
out.
finding like these random like
They're
Gamtee
actually
got a
good.
new jungler, like
Hmm.
M3 has gotten 2 new junglers. Like where are they finding these like random talented Chinese junglers? They're just like
And
here.
he's so good too. Like
Yeah,
he's
no,
actually I like him.
Like
I agree.
Hui's good as well. Like
Mhm.
for Gamtee.
M3's ability to get the team to work together really quick, even with new players, is actually mind-boggling. Like, I think it was the first game where King had a team fight against M3, and it was just ridiculous. Like, I think Condi went in, did a Rek'Sai knockup, and then Love CD like flash ulted like immediately after, and then Dade like came from behind and like pushed him back with the zero ult, and it was just like this 10-second chain CC of beauty from these teams that were like. From like with like a new jungler that they're barely familiar with, and I'm just like, oh my god. And so yeah, M3 is like looking really good randomly. I think their biggest problem is still that their bot lane is like really inconsistent. They're either like smashing or they're just like not doing anything at all. And I also
Yeah.
think that the other issue is just Dade go like he just randomly becomes retiree Dade still. And like I think a lot of this comes down to like a similar issue with what Cool has. Like where Dade like seems to like not give a shit about the jungler, and if a jungler comes to gank rather than like backing off, he'll just go all in on the mid laner and try to trade 1-for-1 in a 1v2 situation. So yeah, I mean they obviously still have their problems, but just their team fighting in general, just given the roster changes and like the obvious language barrier they have to deal with, is actually really impressive.
My personal theory that has no basis in reality whatsoever is now that Cool and Dade are in the same league, they're like Cool is like trying to be Dade. I'm gonna counterpick myself. I'm gonna pick Twisted Fate into Vigar like 3 times in the past week.
Yep. This will surely work. This
Gotta
will work
start.
this time.
So do I, bitch.
And I'm just gonna like not, and then so Dade's like, you know what, okay, because Dade obviously doesn't give a shit about Cool. Come on, but like,
Yeah.
Dade's like, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna pretend there's no jungler, and they're like trying to one up each other in the amount of ridiculously dumb shit that they can get away with. So,
Yep.
My favorite thing about Dade is just like you know in the TGA streams, you get to see the players' reaction to when they get ganked. Like, oh, they got ganked, they're dead, and you're like just see the frustration on the players' faces. You're like, God damn it! And for like Dade, it's like
That is like 2 kills are coming.
it's like
Tuesday. Oh, it must be Friday night on LPL. Okay.
So yeah, and this actually is just a fair amount of different discussion. This Demacia Cup, we saw Mara. Well, we saw Vici place Invictus Gaming. Wasn't about exactly the best thing, exactly the best set to
He
watch.
managed to lose 3 times to a team that doesn't have vision. Pretty impressive.
So
That's probably what tilted him. He was just like, they don't even have
There's
wards!
nothing to clear. What am I doing?
How did we
I'm
lose
just
to
sitting
a
in like a
team
meeting
without
room. They're like, well,
wards?
your gods have vision control. What if we just don't worry about vision at all? And they're just like, genius, we got this. We'll just 3-0 them in like an hour and a half. Oh man.
We'll tilt Mata by not warding anything ever. And just like focus bottom lane. And,
oh my
and
god.
Vasily will feed, and then he'll get so mad that he'll AFK games 2 and 3 and pick Jace. Brilliant!
I just want a documentary on Vasily. I just want a documentary on Vasily's career.
Okay, my favorite Vasily play this weekend. Oh, who was it they were against? He was playing Callista, and they were by Baron, and they had a free Baron, but instead he just insisted on like hopping into the enemy like race to just get gangbanged. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, is he about to 1v3 these guys? Like he's gonna style all over them, and he just like just jumps into the center and just dies in like 3 seconds. Like this is amazing. I love you, Vasily.
But like, I think Vasily's career has gone to a point in which it's just it's comedy. It's like an actual It is because
Don't leave
in the
silly alone, he will die.
I
in the
feel
beginning,
like
it's like growing up as a player, and then he goes to USA where he starts to get a name for himself as like a very aggressive star 80 carry, and then he goes back to China. He so much expectation. He's with a new Korean support, Mata, the best in the world, and now he's just sitting in the house where Mata just constantly just yells at his face. It's like, why are you doing that? Just tears coming down his eyes. This is not what I was promised.
Vasily has a panic room where he just like lifts weights. As we go through the season, he'll get progressively more buff and just like Hulk out at the end. Like Mata will start yelling at him and he'll turn around and he'll be like, no.
So Mata was fined apparently by the Vici organization, and I think Lace is investigating on it.
Yeah.
So, well, so how's that gonna work out?
Are you talking shit about Cloud being BM, but he didn't get fined for it.
Yeah, I mean, well, Cloud didn't AFK for periods of the game and like pick Jace, so there's that.
I also, oh, go ahead.
I think the thing that people were surprised about was just by the amount of money that was levied in this fine. It was like $8,000, but we put into context like the player salaries that they're getting, and it's not like, it's still fairly insignificant, I think. I mean, it's not insignificant, but it's like 8,000 is gonna be large regardless of where you put your, even if you're making $1 million, right, in streaming contracts and everything else, like $8,000 is still like, it's more than a slap on the wrist. And I think it's fair because Vici Gaming spent that amount of money on these players because they want them to perform, right? They want them to be serious, and we're not getting, like, out of certain Korean players, we're not getting this commitment. Where I feel like some of the Chinese organizations are starting to realize they're not getting what they paid for, because not necessarily as a result of like the Korean players even necessarily. Like, I feel like Dandy's performing really well. Spirit's obviously performing really well, but there's
Spirit's performing like a fucking god.
there's only so much, like, you can't just like set on stove add Mata like with a bunch of extremely outdated ingredients or like improperly prepared food. Like, you can't just, he's not like, it's not gonna happen.
How do we get to playoffs?
You don't just like throw a Korean in there and then everything tastes good. Like,
Yeah, I mean, and we can see Mata's frustration with the team just in his play, like, before this whole finding situation. Like, I feel like he hasn't really lost much mechanically, but there'll be times where he'll land really, like this week, he'll land really solid flays and, like, hooks and stuff like that. And I feel like his team wouldn't follow up, so he'd just, like, be really stubborn and just, like, go in all the way anyway, just until death. Like, he just, like, he was so persistent with what he did, and when there was no follow-up, he just continued onward anyway. And I feel like that's just kind of, like, Mata going a little bit YOLO mode. So...
And we even saw in Korea, like, if the games wouldn't go well, or if Imp would do something particularly stupid, which Imp versus Sealy, like, he would tilt, and you could see it in his play. Like, it's just becoming a thing where Mata is, like, not enjoying the game, but at the same time, you have, like, this clash of tension, and he's not in a place where he can perform, but at the same time, the organizations aren't getting, like, I think that they might be being reasonable to an extent, like saying that, okay, we're not in a place where we wanted to be, but at least you're not picking Jace, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yep.
You get what you have. And so speaking of overperforming Korean talent, IEM's coming up, and we have Spirit and the squad. And the Spirit and a group of luggage. No,
I think you can
STIZ
remove
on
and
it.
the squad from that team name. You'll still be fine.
So Spirit, STIZ, the rest of the team, World Elite, going to IEM, and their first.
Now officially the
game.
last place Chinese team going to IM, right? Unless
Oh, right.
11th still. I think they're officially the last place team now.
If that would be a beautiful
Yeah.
setting. They are.
They're officially the last place team.
Because Energy Pacemaker actually did fairly well this
Yeah.
Yep.
week. They got
Energy Pacemaker seriously just cock blocked WWE from going higher.
they,
So bad.
they got a game off IG and a game off Vici Gaming again. We were talking about that series where Mata like fixated on Baron and then like trying to get those picks. Yeah. So.
Yep.
Okay, so
So
this is beautiful. This is the actually
First place
the
NA,
most
first place
beautiful
EU,
setting.
first and second place Korea. You just have like 12th place China. Like, here you guys go. You guys made a fool of yourselves last year. Wait, what? Oh, you had to take a time machine last year? Well, now you just have to now you just have to send the worst team. Sorry, guys. Like,
Yeah.
it's just bad.
Literally the
So-
last place Chinese team.
Someone asked me on Twitter, I think it was like Steven Nguyen from like Paravine asked me like, what games of WE should I watch to like get a feel for how they play for IM, and I'm just, your time is better spent like literally printing out a picture with of the WE logo and just like crying into it like, at this point.
Here's an instruction. It's like, oh, you want to see their best game? It's like, do you own a cat or a dog? It's like, yeah. It's like, all right. So go to the kitty litter. Just scoop out the. It's like.
Yeah,
That's what
I
you
mean,
have. You have.
we're all gonna have to get our W handkerchiefs when we're just like, the casters go on about like W being this legendary squad of season 2 and how they're the the IEM champions. All that stuff. We're just gonna be like crying the whole time. Like, please stop. Please don't say anything more. Can't take it anymore.
Like the IAM, and then we already saw like the Intel, like I follow Intel Extreme Masters on Twitter, and we already saw the tweet. It was like, Hero, Gambit, and WE are all triple gold, and they have like the picture of Salme, and it's
Oh my
Just
God.
like the people that are completely irrelevant to the org now. Yeah, so it'll be.
just why you're just like poking the bear at this point. Like, why are you trying to hurt me?
Yeah.
So how do you see this team faring in IEM, guys? How do you think? Like they are starting to do a lot better, if that even means anything. But how do you think their game against
They're not
TSM
really
goes?
though, because oh my god, their team fights are so bad. Like, I think they're the worst team fighting team in China, which surprise gets you last place in China. Like, their focus fire is non-existent. Like, it's just so fucking bad. Dude.
It's ridiculous because Ninja is like after Spirit, like Ninja is like the second shining light on that team at this point.
Mhm. Yeah.
Like,
That's so sad.
he has these games where he goes like 11-0, right?
Yeah.
For no apparent reason other than
Because
I
he
don't know,
gets Cassidon, I guess. I don't know.
Kassadin and Ezreal, which let's try to rationalize how those two picks work together.
Well, hey, it's like as Thorin said, like, just international tournaments are just like, kind of, they're just, I don't know, like, TSM pays them off for good brackets and standings, right? Because it's TSM against World Elite, and I can't see TSM losing that unless something goes terribly wrong. I mean,
Oh,
even
really?
Even the thing.
no way,
that-
dude.
Even the thing that traditionally, like TSM, the complaint we have is that
It's rigged.
they don't really care about the like they don't even research like the Chinese teams, right? And we've seen it against Starhorn Royal Club. They didn't really research Unicorns of Love because they probably just expected to walk against Unicorns of Love as well. At the Intel Extreme Masters tournament where
Oh yeah, in San Jose, yeah.
yeah, San Jose, Cloud9 qualified. But we can see kind of at these international events where they don't really research their opposition, and I don't even think that will help them here because I think they're just gonna look at this roster and they're gonna say, okay, the only person on this roster who's remotely threatening is Spirit. Let's ban the 3 best junglers in the game right now. Okay, Rek'Sai, Nidalee, Jarvan. Okay, we're done. And then that's like WE's, that's what holds them together right there, because Jarvan like falsely inflates their team fighting where they can kind of split this situation with like double AD or STYZ and Ninja can both do like some damage from this vantage point. So the Cataclysm works okay. So that's what they do. And then he's got just the ridiculous jungle pressure on Rek'Sai and Nidalee. But without those two strategies, they don't really have anything.
Yeah.
So,
So this is how I feel like we're gonna. This is how I feel about the World Elite versus TSM game. Because obviously, I'm a man who likes to vote for the underdog, but I'm not gonna be so crazy as to think that World Elite is likely to win. How I do frame it though is TSM is a team that doesn't do its research. That's what it comes down to. Every single time you see like Cloud9 will go into a set and you're like, okay, they've done their research. Their pick and bans are proper. They've laid out their game plan that works well against this particular team. And then you see TSM that in Worlds last year, in San Jose this year. Wait, was that in December? I don't even remember anymore. That's so far off.
December,
TSM.
back in the old days.
Back in them days. Oh god. But yeah, TSM is a team that just they don't do their research on international teams. They don't. I remember there was even that Loco Doco VOD, and I always go back to that vlog. I always do because he's like
the VOD just like it's Raz. He wakes up from this nightmare and he realizes that no, that actually happened.
yeah. He's like, God, who is their solo laners on Starhorn Royal Club? Oh yeah, it was Cola. He didn't even remember Cola's name or Corn. I don't even know anymore. It's just, but now he has to constantly look back at the Unicorns of Love and be like,
Syndrome.
nah, never. We should have banned Syndrome. It was so obvious all along.
I mean, even if they don't do their research, or if Spirit gets away with playing something better, I don't really see Ninja getting the opportunity to hard carry. Like if he gets first off, wait, what patch will IEM be on? Do we know?
I mean, we're still on
Doesn't say if-
5.2 in China, so it's not going to be on 5.2. But
Yeah, so I was gonna say even if he gets something like Kassadin, or something he does well, and he's up against Bjergsen and a team that focuses on getting Bjergsen ahead, so
and they're not going to ban
Then just-
Ezreal and Anivia, so he'll
Yeah,
probably
exactly.
get a champion that he's like good on. But
Here's how I frame the set. I think World Elite has a chance in taking this only because actually it depends on who's blue side and who's purple side. Because both teams, I think the most contested pick is going to be Maokai. Mostly because Aluka
unless
is...
Luca decides to just pick Gnar again, like
No, please!
if Luca gets a solo kill this game, I'm just gonna be so happy. Please, Luca, I believe in you.
that's so mean. I'm not going to go there.
I don't think it's
Yeah.
I don't think it's gonna happen. Like I don't see it, man. Like TSM is not a bad team, and World Elite is a bad team, and
Yeah,
I
but if
have to
not...
think, what are TSM's win conditions? Like, we need to snowball off our mid laners.
yeah.
Okay, who's...
Ninja is good at just living sometimes though, so that's a thing.
And sometimes, yeah, but at the same... and you
I like
get
how
into
that's my
this-
praise for Ninja. He can live
And
sometimes.
Ninja's been performing a lot better. Like, I
Yeah.
have to give him, that credit.
To be
On an
fair-
individual basis, Ninja has, really stepped up, but...
To be fair, this is where the Chinese...
He's not gonna... against Bjergsen, he's not gonna do anything.
Yeah, and I feel like this is where the whole China is always behind in patches is going to be the most significant because that he always rests on, well, not always, but he does rest back on the Kassadin pick, and Kassadin is not going to be a factor here. Not at all. He's been completely taken
I
out of
think
the
that
picture.
he just plays it when he can. I
Hmm.
don't think he's as reliant on it. I think he's much more reliant on things like the Ezreal and he'll pick the Ahri or the Kassadin when they're lucky enough to be open.
Yeah.
But I think that he's much more likely to go to the Ezreal or the Anivia or something like that.
You
And
just
then
need-
the
Go ahead.
Anivia pick. I can almost see being the one thing that could actually be okay.
Hmm.
And if Spirit just camps mid lane and then they have enough energy to just stall out until you get to this point where TSM has to make this late game decision and their late game decision making isn't the best, and then there's just this epic throw because World Elite has managed to stall out so hard just because of the Anivia pick. That's
Mhm.
the only thing that I could see actually being okay. The other issue is Santorin and Spirit. I think actually this group has really good junglers. It has Diamond, Spirit, and then even I think it's
Ambition.
Karsa for UI Flush Wolf.
I think
Oh
it's,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, no,
Well,
no,
it's
no. Ambition for yeah,
Ambition,
not
yeah.
Yes.
ambition. Okay, so never mind. I was thinking like completely wrong. It was like, but at least it has a couple really good junglers. Like,
Mhm.
so that could
Wow.
be a thing for TSM.
What are you trying to
need
say
to-
about ambition? I hear you.
they just need to get STYZ to play Graves and then fly Conan over, and then when Graves just shoves up the wave, Conan would just sit middle on Bjergsen, and then that'll be their win conditions. That's what's gonna
There we
happen.
go.
There you go.
I
That's
found
the
it,
win.
guys. Hire me, World Elite.
Hashtag just tilt them. Okay.
So, do you guys have anything
Conan's
else?
got to bring that Rome back.
You guys have anything else you want to talk about before we sign off on IEM and just about the show, I guess?
There was something, I think.
Uh-oh.
We talked about
That's-
NaMei, we talked about Vici Gaming, we talked about OMG.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about M3, talked about a lot of things. We actually covered a lot of topics today in a short amount of time. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just briefly, this. Oh, I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm. Oh, we found it. Just gotta reel it in.
That next week's games are actually going to be really good, and I think part of that is that WE won't be there, and that makes me. That's a mean thing to say, but it's almost like thank you
It's so
IM for
true.
taking them, and that's like
Take the trash bin. We're gonna get some high quality games. in here.
that's the bright spot because we've got like a bunch of LGD games. NaMei's gonna be back. We get to see the IG versus Vici Gaming rematch. So
Hey.
J support
That's
again.
beautiful.
What if IG picks J support and wins that? That's gonna be great.
that would be pretty funny.
Oof. That would be nice.
I think Satai is doing okay. Like,
Yeah, I think it's cool seeing him play top.
He's getting better.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's not so comedic to
Can-
just hear the fact that, like, oh, he's been trained by PDD or something.
Also, no one's going to take him. No one's going to take like Pokemon seriously on an international stage if he ends up getting there. So
Yep.
And he said, I can play. He said in an interview that he actually feels like top is like more his style. He can make some of like the deeper plays and stuff like that. So.
Mhm.
And his Gnar was
with that,
his
but-
Gnar was much better than Flandre's Gnar, for example.
Wow!
Jackson to take a sip of this tea.
I actually spit my fucking water out. Holy
He's like,
shit!
But that's,
Oh my
But we
God,
have
dude.
like the LGD versus EDG rematch. We have the Snake versus OMG and LGD rematch.
I see him applying for other teams. Like, what are your qualifications? I'm better Gnar than Flandre. Oh my god!
And his Kennen today in the first game, like,
Yeah.
obviously we can't talk about the second and third game because they're made pretty invalid, but his Kennen today in the first game was pretty good, yeah.
There we go. So perfect. Look forward to the next week of LPL that does not feature World Elite or Elite. That in itself should sell out tickets. All right, so shout outs, guys. Chelsea.
Shout out to the score. Shout out to Frostgren, who is not feeling well and couldn't be here, but obviously Raz did his best Frostgren impression.
will.
So,
Yes.
congratulations for that. Shout out to WE, as much shit as I've given you. If you do manage to take a game, good job.
Yeah,
Good job.
I'm like a
All right,
CLG/WE fan, so now that CLG's doing well, WE has to be the worst team on the planet.
gotta
Just
have that fail. Sorry, Sir Drexen. Shout out.
Alright, yeah. Since we talked about Love TT, and I've been reminded since I forget to do it every single time. Shout outs to Esports Heaven, but also to Esports HTV, which is our Twitch channel. We talk about Chinese League on here all the time, but we actually Esports Heaven actually has like a studio or that we use and everything where we cast Chinese StarCraft. So we actually have StarCraft events there. We do WCS China, like GPL and the Kung Fu Cup. So tune into that. It's actually pretty good stuff. Chinese StarCraft, yay! More Chinese esports. That's about it. I remembered finally.
StarCraft.
I was planning on doing that for like 4 weeks. So.
See, I didn't even know this was existed, so that's actually
Yeah.
All right. So, oh yeah, I guess that's my shout outs now. Shout outs to Frostgren. I am the new Frosk. Hashtag Black Frost.
It's like so much in common. Really similar too.
You couldn't
Shout
even
out-
do her signature line correctly.
Oh my god.
He did it before the call went on, and then it was just nerves.
We were practicing, and it was like it just came out. I was like, "Oh, what do I say?" Okay. So shout out to Paravine, Liquid Legends. I guess teammate. I think that's it. I guess,
I
I
guess.
think that's it. I guess
They're doing okay. Like,
finally.
Yeah.
I mean, well, it's really nice. I like the growth with the team.
Let's not talk about teammate before we close, please.
Okay.
I've already spent way too much on WE.
Okay. Oh wow. Wow.
Wow.
All right. Okay, I think that's it. Wave your hands, everybody.
There you go. I was waiting.
There
for
we
you to
go.